I would like to go to my next guest. We are joined with Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik is Syrian American award winning journalist and political commentator, editor in chief at Middle East Discourse. Dan, is that still correct? I just want to make sure to get you right
Yeah, I'm
before.
not. I'm not at Middle East Discourse. I no, but that's fine. I did teach at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law for 12 years, and I'm a human rights and labor attorney as well. And I have a new book out, "The Case for Palestine: Why It Matters, Why You Should Care."
Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. Um, Trump initially went with this Joe Biden plan that effectively was going to remove all the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank and send them to Egypt and send them to Jordan. Now, Egypt and Jordan both said no, just like they told Joe Biden no. A large amount of the press in the United States was going with the idea that, oh my God, I can't believe Donald Trump was doing this, ignoring the fact that this was also Joe Biden's plan. I think, and I want to get your take on it, that they are stuck in somewhat of a pickle. Either you kill everybody or you expel everybody. Killing everybody feels bad, so they don't want to do that. And so their thought is, okay, well, we'll expel people into Egypt and Jordan. Now, Egypt has come back and said, okay, we have our own plan. And their plan is we have $20 billion that we're going to get, and we're going to rebuild Gaza. I guess my thing is, though, do we really want to go back to October 7th? Meaning, if the plan is just, we're just going to rebuild Gaza and we're going to go back to some normality, that doesn't seem to be a legitimate or viable plan. Give me your take on CC's $20 billion proposal. Does it have legs? Is there any chance for it to come to fruition? And if it did come to fruition, what would it mean for the people of Gaza in this kind of new rebuilding that they're talking about?
I mean, I don't know if it has legs politically. I mean, that is, I don't know if the U.S. and Israel will accept it. I think at least it's a start. I think it's a positive plan because it would allow the Palestinians to stay in Gaza while the reconstruction happened, and it
Right.
should, that makes sense. Okay, so I hope a plan like that would come to fruition. You're right. Look, as long as Israel exists as a single, basically, single religious state where non-Jews do not have the rights that Jews have, and as long as the people of Palestine are occupied by Israel, you're going to have violence. You're going to have, discord.
Right.
But I think you have to look to the medium to long term. I mean, the way I view it at the moment is the main thing right now is Palestinian survival. They have to survive. They have to live, and they have to be able to stand their ground. Okay, as long as that can happen, I think Israel, um, in the end, I think Israel will not last. I mean, not in the long term, not in the next. I think 10 to 20 years, Israel will collapse under the weight of its own immorality, its own corruption. So, like any,
Just
war
to
of
interject real
attrition.
quick, but it doesn't
What's
seem
that?
like that. Just to interject, I'm sorry. It doesn't seem like that now. From their point of view, they're expanding into Syria. They're expanding into various areas of Lebanon, or at the very least on the borders. They have a U.S. administration that is completely obsequious to whatever
Yes.
they want. So, what would be the underlying factor that ends Israel? Meaning, if everything I'm saying is true now, what would be the thing? Why do you think that they would end? What would be the factor? What would be the strategic, let's say, deficit that ends the Israeli project?
Yeah, I think first of all, um, every society uh, is to some extent founded on myths, right? That people need to believe in for that
Right.
society to continue as is. And Israel has its myths. Um, and those have been shattered after October 7th. The idea, and let's go over a few of those. I mean, one key myth to Israel is that it's the eternal victim, right? and that it is the hunted one in the Middle East, right? Actually, Bob Dylan has a good song about that called "Neighborhood Bully," and it's an ironic song because it's about Israel being the neighborhood bully, but really, when you listen to the song, it's everyone else who's the bully against Israel. Okay, and that's the myth. That's what That's a key myth. The other key myth is that they're invincible, right? The other key myth is that they're the most moral army in the world. Those have been shattered. Okay, everyone knows now they're not moral, they're not invincible because they've been, beaten pretty bad, even by Hamas, by people running around in flip flops, and they're not the victim; they're the persecutor. Okay, so and even many Jews within Israel understand that, and many Jews certainly outside understand it, especially young Jews who they need to keep immigrating to Israel to survive demographically, right? And so I think that they will not get that demographic support. I think immigration will start going the opposite way. And we see that. There's going to be more Israelis leaving Israel than are entering. And that will affect them economically, it will affect the society, and it will affect it demographically, where if the Palestinians can survive, the Arabs will outnumber the Israelis. And that is a big fear, by the way, that Israel's always had. They've always known they have to demographically keep up. And I don't think they'll be able to do that. And also, they've already found themselves economically, politically, diplomatically isolated. I think that isolation will continue. And I think it will lead to civil strife within Israel, where you will have people fighting each other. And it just won't be a place people want to live. Again, of course, the foundational myth or the foundational promise of Israel is that it is a place of refuge where Jews from around the world can safely go and live a safe and prosperous life. Well, again, that's not true. No, everyone knows that that's not true anymore. It's not a safe place to be because they've aggressed against the Palestinians so much that the Palestinians will always push back, and Hezbollah will always push back, and others will always push back. So it's not a safe place, and it's not a place where people can prosper. The economy is tanking. And yes, they survive fairly well on U.S. handouts, but I believe, one, economies can't last on handouts. And also, I think those handouts are not going to be there forever, certainly not in the level they have been.
Yeah.
So I think for all those reasons, Israel is not, I think, again, time is on the side of the Palestinians if they can just hold out. It's a war of attrition. They can win that war of attrition if they're not forced out or killed, so that
Yeah.
may be a big if. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think it is up to the Arab world in large part to say no. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing I heard this morning
Mhm.
is that, there's rumors going around Damascus that um, the U.S. and Israel may prevail upon Jelani, the self-appointed president of Syria, to take in Palestinians
Really?
in return for aid, in return for normalization of relationships and end of sanctions. So let's keep our eye on Syria. See, that's another card that Trump may be able to play because Jelani, with Assad removed and Jelani basically being a puppet of the West, and he's shown himself to be that up till now. He may be willing to do what other Arab countries are not willing to do. So let's keep an eye out on Syria.
How would that even work? I mean, so what is the thought that they would forcibly expel the Palestinians into Syria? Where would they live? Where would the housing come from? Like, how does that materially
Well,
were.
I assume that the U.S. would say, "Oh, we'll build those houses. We'll make sure there's places for people to live there." Again, this is a very embryonic idea, but I
But
do
it's not
think
shocking idea.
no.
I mean, considering Trump wants them out, Egypt has said no. Jordan
Jordan
said
said
no.
no. Even Saudi Arabia is saying they won't go along with that plan. So Syria is the X factor. They got a new puppet in town that they
Yeah.
may try to prevail on. So we'll just see. But I think people need to keep their eye on Syria and whether they might be
What's
willing
happening
to
in the
collaborate on ethnic cleansing.
What's happening in the West Bank? It's not getting a huge amount of view just because of what's taking place in Gaza, but something is clearly taking place on the ground.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say there's a new Nakba happening there. I think 40,000 Palestinians have been displaced from some of the refugee camps there, and Israel's saying they'll never be allowed to return. You have mass destruction of housing and infrastructure, killings of Palestinians, including Palestinian children, and large numbers of arrests of Palestinians. So what you're seeing is an aggression against the West Bank that everyone agrees has not been seen since 1967.
I guess to what end though? Like
I
meaning
think they
if those
want to
people are
push those. I think they want to. They've said what they want. They want to annex the West Bank, and I think they want to push those Palestinians into Jordan. Push the people of Gaza into Egypt. Push the people of the West Bank into Jordan, which happened to some extent. During the first Nakba and the occupation of 1967. Um, Again, Jordan says they'll resist that.
right.
Hopefully they will. But we'll see. Again, I think that Israel feels. Here's the danger we have: is that I think Israel understands everything I've just said about its own vulnerabilities
Right.
over the fact that if the Palestinians survive in place, Israel will lose the war of attrition. I think they see this as their last chance to get rid of the Palestinians. And they will try very hard to do that, either through expulsion and murder. So that it's a dangerous time for sure. Um, and I
By the
think
way,
the
I
work,
think you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Just to say, I do think you're right. I mean, it seems like they're taking this as this is our moment. This is our chance. We are going to try to knock it out the park. We have an administration that's willing to do it. We have a U.S. administration that's willing to back us on it. So we are going to take the opportunity that we have at our disposal to try to eliminate this issue going forward. The issue I think that they're running into is they have no, I mean, to your point, nobody backs them on this. Like nobody is
Right.
saying, hey, this is a great idea for you to expel the Palestinian population in Gaza and Egypt. Nobody is backing them on it. And I guess that's why I say, to what end are they doing this in the West Bank if indeed Jordan has already said no?
I think they feel they could force Jordan. Force Jordan's hand. And some of it is like really, it's like a kidnapping. It's like saying, the problem that they're going to give Egypt and Jordan in the world, they're going to present a choice essentially: either take these people or we will kill them. And that is a tough choice that countries will have to face. One can understand why that would present a dilemma, right?
Yeah,
Egypt, I can tell you. So I was in Egypt a couple times in the last year, and I think the Egyptians do feel that they are between a rock and a hard place. They've taken in about 100,000 Palestinians.
really.
Yes, either people who were injured and needed medical treatment, or frankly, people who could pay a lot of money, pay a ransom to get into Egypt, about $5,000 to $6,000 per adult and $1,000 per child. And I personally know some people who did that from Gaza, who were able to, through family, friends who live in Europe and whatnot, or basically all of their life savings, everything they had, they put towards paying this ransom to one company that is owned by the son of President Sisi to get permission to come into Egypt. So there's about 100,000 Palestinians. And by the way, they're not well tracked. So that's just an estimate. It may be even a little more. They think, by the way, in toto, 300,000 Palestinians have left since October 7th. So that 2.3 million figure that we're given is certainly down, even before you start counting the deaths, is down to 2 million. Okay. And again, probably half went to Egypt. And they paid this money to do that. Again, unless they had a serious medical condition in Egypt, I believe took those people in for free. So, but here was Egypt's dilemma. Like, okay, we're going to take some of these people, yes, because people are being murdered and they're being wounded. So we're not heartless people. We're going to take some. But if we take much more than that, we're just partners in ethnic cleansing. So that's been the dilemma. That's been the tension, right? And I think Israel and possibly the U.S. feel that they can turn up the heat enough. Again, they can murder enough people to cajole countries into taking the Palestinians as a last resort to preventing them from being killed. I mean, that's, and I think in the West Bank, you're starting to see that. You're just see, and also what they're doing, they've already made Gaza uninhabitable unless there is major reconstruction. It's not a place people can live. Um, Certainly in any way that we think is properly. And they want to do that to the parts of the West Bank where the Palestinians live too.
So let's say that Sisi's plan is accepted. And let's say they decide to rebuild Gaza. They are rebuilding it. I hate this because I feel like they're rebuilding this only up until the next conflict that takes place.
Well,
That
it's probably true. I mean, and that's always been the case. I mean, that's always been the case. And there's always there's, I mean, obviously this is unique. This, the duration and intensity of this has never been seen.
it's been like 80 years. And
Yeah,
we
but
keep stumping our toe on the same
yeah,
issue.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It will have to be resolved. I mean, and it'll be resolved one way or another. The Israelis, their final solution is getting rid of the Palestinians. The Palestinians want,
To stay.
well, at one point they wanted a state of their own within the confines of historic Palestine. That's gone. That, I mean, that no one believes that can work anymore because Israel's destroyed the ability to do that. Where would that state be? Um, so now I think the real goal, the only, you have two different goals. I think one is Israel wants to get rid of the Palestinians. The Palestinians want one state that is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, one person, one vote, which Israel's afraid of because they know that would mean the end of Israel as they
Right.
know it.
Right. Which
So
they're fully against.
yeah, so that is the struggle, and you know, so again, for Israel to get what it wants, it needs to murder people and ethnically cleanse people, and that's what they're going to keep trying to do.
What are the chances of that one state?
I
If the
think
two state
eventually it
solution
will
is gone,
happen. I do think so. I don't, again, not in the short term, but I think the medium to long term. I think within our lifetimes, you will see that. What it looks, I hope Palestine is in livable condition by the time that happens. I think the Israelis are certainly willing to just bring down the house to prevent that. But the so-called Samson option. But
right?
I, I just don't think that what is happening is sustainable, and I don't think the Palestinians I think they are resilient enough to survive. And if they survive within historic Palestine, they will win. I do think that. And not just because I want that to happen, but I think you see what happened in Gaza, where, this round, after 15 months of genocide, the Palestinians are still there by and large. Obviously, a lot left, the 300,000, and a lot were killed, but most are still there. Most want to still live there, even if it's amongst the rubble.
Wow.
And I
That
know
is hard.
people. I know people in Gaza. That is their view.
Let me
They,
ask you this.
yeah.
If and I'm not advocating for this. I just want to put this out there very clearly. I'm not advocating for this at all. If the people want to stay, they want to stay. But if they can get better living conditions somewhere else, why is that not valuable? And
Well,
again,
first of all,
I don't advocate for this.
some would take that deal. There's no question some would take that deal, of course. And again, that's what the U.S. and Israel are counting on, that they've leveled Gaza so much that they'd get a lot of takers who'd say, "Yeah, we love Gaza, we love our people, but this stinks." Um, there would be a lot of people who would take that deal, but the Palestinians are a unique people who are very tied to the land in which they live, and they love the land of Palestine. It is their land. It's the only land they know, and they have these incredible connections with the people around them. And so, while some would take that deal, I do think the vast majority would be like, no,
Yeah.
we'd rather die, or we're certainly willing to live in this rubble rather than be pushed out. And it's an incredible thing. Again, it's a mentality that a lot of us maybe don't understand.
Yeah.
But um,
It is what it
I think
is.
it's
What
real.
it
I
is.
think it's real. So I had a friend, I'll just say, and this may sound really like I'm going on a tangent, but I had these
No, go for it.
friends, and they were doctors, and they were fairly well to do. They had a beautiful home, and they had a beautiful yard, and but they also owned this pond that was not connected to their home. It was, I don't know, a couple miles from their house. And they owned this land that had this pond on. Okay, and every year, uh, they would have to clean up. What people would do. All these young people would come to that pond, vandalize it, leave junk and condoms, and it was gross. And I always wondered in my own brain, like, why don't they just abandon this? I mean, why do they put up, And another friend said, well, they come from Eastern Europe. That's their, the kind of peasant mentality. Like, this is their land, and they're gonna keep it, and they're gonna do
Yeah.
it. And I think, again, the people of it's a long way to say. I think the people of Palestine have that same feeling. Like, you can do whatever you want to us. You can do whatever you want to our land, but this is our land, and we're not moving. So, and the Israelis not only, you know, do they resent it because they want the land, but they're very jealous of that, because they're not connected to that land. The Israelis the vast majority are immigrants to historic Palestine, right? They came
Right.
from Europe, they came from the United States. They're newcomers. They are not tied to the land. And they're jealous of the Palestinians and how connected they are to the land. And they want to destroy that connection. They want to root it out, just like they root out those olive trees. You saw in South Lebanon, Israelis pulling out the olive trees by the roots and taking them back to Israel. They did the same thing in Syria. They did the same thing in the West Bank. These olive trees can live for thousands of years. Some go back to the Roman Empire. It's incredible. Some are like 3,000 years old. And the Israelis, have just since the Nakba, they've destroyed like 8 to 900,000 of those because, again, they represent They represent the
Connection to the land.
Palestinians' connection to the land, and they will root those out.
Do you think
Just
that
say,
Trump?
yeah.
No,
Hmm.
no. I'm sorry to interrupt. Do
No,
you
that's
think that
all.
Trump?
Just
And
yeah. Go ahead.
no, no, no. Okay, I'm sorry. Do you think Trump wants to maintain this deal, regardless of what Netanyahu wants? What's your sense of
Maintain the
this?
ceasefire deal.
Yeah, like what's your sense of, because Trump is an odd factor in this.
He
Trump has
is.
put out
He's unpredictable. Trump is.
he
Trump
is,
is. Yeah. You. Yeah.
and he's put out this video with oh, what is the man's name? It'll come to me in a moment. But in the video, he called Netanyahu sick son of a bitch. Jeffrey Sachs.
It was
Trump has
Jeffrey
also had,
Sachs. Yes.
yeah, he also had clips where Trump was talking about this idea of Netanyahu not wanting a deal, that the Palestinians wanted a deal. And so it's like, okay, Donald Trump is being paid a huge amount of money to take a certain position on Israel, just like many other political people in the US. So it's like he goes to the Muslim community, he tells them, I'm going to get a deal. I'm going to end this war. I'm not going to start wars. I'm going to end this war. Um, where do you find him on this? He's been making this humanitarian argument of, well, we got to remove him because, it's horrible living in that situation. We need to end this conflict. We don't want this conflict to start back up. So he's making a humanitarian argument for why he needs to ethnically cleanse, which is just outrageous, right? It just sounds bizarre in
Yeah.
his face.
Especially given
Um,
that it was the U.S. that really was a party to making it, to
yeah,
destroying it in the first place. It's really Biden and Trump tag teaming each other. Like,
it's
I'm
so
going to
bizarre.
level the place, and then you're going to say, well, it's been leveled, and I didn't do it, and I'm sorry it was leveled, but now to help those, those
Yeah,
people, they now have to leave. It's insane. I mean, really, when you just go beneath the surface, it's there's nothing really humanitarian
but that
about
is
it.
the argument he's making. His argument
Yeah,
is,
it
yeah,
is.
I know we destroyed this. I'm sorry for paying 70 to 80% in the destruction of all of this. But now that it's destroyed, we need to get these people out. It's that, right? So it feels horrible to even counter or to even counts the take. Um, but give me a sense of him in these negotiations. Do you get the sense that he wants to fulfill this idea of, I want to end this war and I want to start another war, even at the expense of somebody like Netanyahu, who seems to be doing any and everything in his power to destroy the ceasefire agreement?
I think Trump wants the ceasefire to continue. I do think that. But I also think that if push came to shove and Netanyahu started it up again, he'd still keep arming him and funding him. And he's kind of said as well, not kind of, he has said as much. He
Yeah.
has said as much. Yeah, he has been pressed on it, and he said, it's not clear if the ceasefire will continue, and it's up to Israel. He did say that it's not our war; it's their war. So whether it continues or not, it's up to them. Now, of course, that could be political rhetoric. I understand that, but I think that you know I don't think he's going to do a lot to stop Netanyahu. I mean, and look what's happening now. I mean, Netanyahu's doing everything he can to kill the ceasefire deal. I
Yes,
mean,
he is.
and I think he wouldn't be doing that if he didn't think that he could get away with that.
Mhm.
So, um, I think the problem with Trump also is that whatever his intentions are, and that I'm not even sure what they are, but I don't think he understands. Um, I don't think he understands what's the true nature of Palestine and Israel, and I don't think he understands the region. So I think he feels like he can snap his fingers and make this thing happen where the Palestinians leave, and it's just not true, And I
Yeah.
think that lack of understanding, though, I think throughout history, those types of lack of understanding can lead to terrible, terrible consequences and terrible decisions. So I mean, Trump is not a geopolitical strategist,
Mm-mm.
right? So that's of a great concern. That even if he had the best of intentions, which I'm not sure he does, but even if he did, I'm not sure he has a good enough understanding to do the right thing here.
No, you're perfectly right. Dan Kovalik is a Syrian American
Actually, I'm
award-winning
Slovak American. I think
Slovak.
you have something else
I'm
in the
looking at
bio
this.
there.
I don't know why this is okay. I need to update
It
this calendar,
maybe
obviously.
it's Kavork you're thinking of, which is okay.
Well, I'm just reading through the bio that I have for you, and I think, okay, the bio is clearly wrong.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
that's
even know
okay.
why.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm not even sure
I'd
why
be
the
happy
heritage matters. Yeah, as I kept reading, I was like, okay, I don't know why the heritage matters. Maybe it's just because the subject matter.
Right.
Dan Kovalik, I'm just going to say it that way. Journalist, author. You have a new book out, Dan. Please tell the audience the new book, just so they're
Yeah,
aware.
the case for Palestine, why it matters, why you should care. I'd love for people to pick it up. And also, I'm working on a new book with Jeremy Kuzmarov called Syria, Anatomy of a Regime Change. That will be coming out in September. So look for
Jeremy
that.
is good people. Jeremy has been on the
He's a
show a few
great
times.
guy, wonderful guy, good
Yeah,
friend.
Jeremy is really good people. Dan, thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry about the bio. I'm gonna
That's
fix
okay.
this
It's
now.
all good. It happens. And I enjoy your show. I enjoy you. I'm happy to come back again. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You
Take
have
care.
a fantastic evening. Be safe, man.
You too. Take care.